Welcome to the Underground, the Steel City Underground, the black and gold standard for Pittsburgh Steelers coverage. Now, here's your host, Joe Kuzma and Zach Celadonia.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of the Steel City Underground podcast. My name's Joe Kuzma, and welcome back, good colleague, buddy, friend, co-host. I guess we have a 1A, 1B, and a 1C around here on this show. A 1, Zach Flash Celadonia. What is up, my friend? We've got football this week. Well, we had college football this weekend, so I know you're living the life right now. What's going on?
Oh yeah, buddy. I'm juiced up. I'm real excited. I had the best college football weekend of my year, even though it's week one. But I mean the calendar year. I haven't done this good gambling wise on college football since like week 4 or 5 last year. So great weekend on that front. Got a fantasy draft tonight, fantasy draft tomorrow night. Then it's Thursday night football. Then college football week 2 starts up, and then Sunday NFL football. So we are here. We have arrived at our destination.
We are here, and where are we exactly? I don't know. It feels like it's such a blur, man. I mean, we went from training camp, and then all of a sudden, like, summer's over, and it's football season, and it's like, I'm sad, and then I'm not. You know what I mean? I'm sad because it's like pools are closing, the days are getting shorter, but now football's back. So it's like, how can I be sad? Like, I'm like more depressed. Like, you get into the winter, and football season's over with. And it's still like gets dark at like 4:30, and like
I hate winter. I hate winter time unless we're like on our way to the playoffs.
Yeah. Oh, that's the roughest. That's the roughest part. So we have a little bit before. There'll be a pregame show at some time toward the end of the week. Like I said, I'm back out of town. I got one last summer trip before all the football stuff like really starts to fall into place. So we'll try and get that to all of you out there. Maybe Friday. Hopefully I'm not like dead by then. So dead tired or just don't survive the trip. But anyway, I won't be partying too hard. We've got a game on this upcoming Sunday, September 10th. That's against the San Francisco 49ers. But before we head into previewing all of that, one last overview of the expectations for the 2023 Pittsburgh Steelers, both as a team and some individual performances. So we're going to get right to it, since myself and Brian have been doing a lot of the prediction stuff on the last 2 episodes. I do want to get some of your input on this as well, for the people, of course, for the people. And we'll get it out there, recorded, so you could take these little snippets and shove it in everyone's face later in the year. But there are some folks who are turning around to the thought that the Pittsburgh Steelers could be a contender, possibly even win the division. I've seen at least playoff spots or wild cards and everything. It's such a hard thing to predict this stuff, especially on paper this time of the year. So many different things can happen. As you know, like a couple of years ago, the Baltimore Ravens were surging, and then all of a sudden Lamar Jackson gets hurt, and they went straight into like the crapper and missed out on the playoffs. Went from 1 seed to completely out of everything. So anything could happen, but at least on paper. Initial thoughts, how do you feel about the Pittsburgh Steelers within the division? Are they a playoff contender, or are they even a little bit more than that?
Yeah, clip it and shove it, I will, to many of those people. But I will say this, since the preseason has ended, I've noticed a real uptake in the respect the Steelers have gotten around the league from a lot of media heads and people that talk about football on TV, which is great to see. The more the merrier. But I think that we kind of had this feeling going forward, and some people will say it's because we're homers or because we're Steeler fans, but we were closer to the situation than a lot of people that get paid to do it on TV for mainstream networks, because they aren't, specifically Steeler based. Mm-hmm. So I still love the fact that there are a couple people out there that still doubt us. You don't have to look far to hear people complain about, oh, well, it's just the preseason, or let's see them do it in the regular season, or they love to list the other AFC teams and act as if there's just no way the Steelers can catch them. But I think it's a very plausible reality that the Steelers do catch those teams this year. I think you can expect, or I'm going to expect, a playoff appearance. Certainly, I want a playoff spot, and I think they can win a game or more. I think winning a playoff game this year not only checks a box for Kenny career-wise, but it checks a box for Tomlin getting the monkey on his back that's beginning to grow with all the. We haven't won a playoff game since what, like 2016, I believe, 2017. It's been a long time since we lost to the Jaguars round 2, whenever that was.
2017 team's the one that lost to the Jaguars. Brian and I were talking about some of the more disappointing playoff losses, and that was the team to go all the way. Dan Rooney had passed away. They had the DMR patches that were on. They went 13-3, and then Shazier gets hurt. And
yeah.
Disappointing.
That was TJ's rookie year. So I think winning a playoff game this year is a reasonable expectation, and that's my expectation based off of what I've seen so far this offseason, this camp, with the additions they've made and the success that they've had on the field early. Say what you want about preseason this, preseason that. The starting offense, led by Kenny Pickett, was given 5 drives this preseason, and they scored 5 touchdowns. Does not get much better than that. So my expectations are to make it to the playoffs, despite how scary and how tough the AFC is, and to win a playoff game, because chances are the way the playoffs are going to seed out, because it just always happens like this, they'll probably end up seeing the Bengals or the Ravens in their first playoff game, and they know them the best. So if they get in and they have to face Harbaugh and the Ravens or Joe Burrow and the Bengals, I feel good about those situations. They've already shown they can beat the Bills in the past, albeit that was 2 years ago at this point, but that team's still very similar to the team the Steelers beat, with 45-year-old Big Ben leading the charge. So I'm not necessarily afraid of the Bills. Nobody knows what the Jets are going to be like. They could be really good. I'm sipping the Kool-Aid on that, but they could end up like the Broncos of last year. Oh, everything's in place. All you need is a quarterback. Well, look what happened there. If they run into the Chiefs, that would suck. So hopefully, if they make it into the playoffs, just don't see the Chiefs in the first round. They can beat any other team that gets in there. I'm very confident based off of what I've seen so far.
I'd even match up with the Chiefs, to be honest, as crazy as that might sound. It's a little more of something to chew off. I mean, that first quarter a couple of years ago, and TJ, they just couldn't score on offense. It was like the same thing over and over. But
a first quarter, man. I was living large.
TJ scores by himself. And I mean, it was just like, oh my God, they might be able to do this
thing. That was me in my living room.
Yeah, and then that didn't turn out so well. And I mean, they just played that team a few weeks sooner too. It's like, or earlier. Ugh. My brain isn't connected to my mouth today, so just bear with me.
It's a holiday.
Yeah, not enough coffee. So, as far as like with the Steelers and a playoff win, we're talking about this too. Like Bill Belichick hasn't won in a few years. John Harbaugh has had like 1 playoff win, maybe 2. That team's won a Super Bowl. Pete Carroll hasn't won a whole ton. Your old guard, really, when you look at it, I think Sean Payton's the only one with Drew Brees that might have snuck out a couple of extra wins here or there, but it's not like they had their Super Bowl was even further in the rear view. And people will always talk about this, that, and the other thing. But let's see what Sean McVay will do. Sean McDermott, for all the more like love, like you said, the Buffalo Bills get. He's got like 1 playoff win, like in the last 3-4 seasons. And I think that's something to bring up too. Unless you're making it to like the AFC title game and or winning the Super Bowl, you don't really have winning records unless you're just consistently in the championship games, either conference or Super Bowl. And that's just an unrealistic thing to look at. See, this whole show, realistic, even though Brian and I had the Steelers 14-3. I'm not sure if you heard that.
I did. I caught that. Yeah.
I looked at that and I'm like, I don't think 14 is realistic. Double digits is certainly realistic. 10, 11. Some people say 12 or 13. 12 or 13, it's very tough to chew off for any pro football team, but the schedule is weak enough, at least for, the Steelers. I'd say at least the Steelers have like the 6th or 7th weakest. They have the weakest schedule in the entire division, I believe. Overall, too.
7th for 7th Super Bowl.
Yeah, there you go, man. I like the way you think. So, 14. I mean, 5-1 in the division. I mean, as long as they need to be positive in the division in order for tiebreakers and make it to a wild card, or win the entire thing. It just makes me wonder. Like, I could go on till the cows come home, because it's funny to me, like some of the respect that people give, like Deshaun Watson or even the Ravens for that matter. I don't think that the Ravens, I think they've got some issues. They've got a lot of young bodies that they're counting on. The Bengals are probably more of a complete team, even though now they're starting to feel that little bug of having to fill in some spots. I really feel like this is the most complete team that the Steelers have had in a very long time since you've been on. Desmond King being added to this mix as well. That's the only spot, like, I think, like, we didn't talk about it a whole lot because I'm glossing over the amount of snaps that a nickel corner or a slot corner might play. But I think Desmond King might be somebody that's finally, like, in that territory of, this is the guy. Mike Hilton, let's put it this way. Mike Hilton, I never felt was the strongest cover guy. So he could be even better than Hilton in some aspects. But as far as against the run or sending Hilton on a blitz, those are the things, I think, the elements that the Steelers have been missing for a couple of years now. And they might have that with King. It could still have that with Sullivan for all I know, but obviously they didn't feel comfortable enough just rolling into battle with just the one slot corner there, like, kind of pegged. And I know King can move around, but that's probably where he best projects. And they might not want to move Patrick Peterson around too. So just real quick, I know I throw you a curveball here. It's not on the topics bar, but do you like the Desmond King signing?
Oh yeah, oh yeah. I was super psyched. So when cuts started happening the other week for the final 53-man rosters across the NFL, that was the main spot that I know I was looking at, and I know a lot of other people were looking at as nickel corners were being cut. Bradley Roby was another one from the Saints, and Desmond King were pretty much the top two names.
Yeah.
Going around that the Steelers should look at that really did fit their pedigree. Not only were they still weak at the nickel corner spot, Sullivan and Riley are good stories, and I'm happy for the two of them both making the team. They both deserve to make the team, but there's a difference between a guy being able to make the team and being able to give you consistent starter snaps. And I think Desmond King is just a cut above talent-wise, both Riley and Sullivan. And they fit Desmond King and Roby. They both fit the Steelers' MO because there was a lot of pre-draft interest in both players. I know King was an official visit. Roby's a former first-round pick from Ohio State. Like, all the things were there for the Steelers to seek them out if able to. They probably kept their eyes on them throughout the preseason, and by all accounts, King really shouldn't have been cut. They like who they have in Houston. Opposite of him, and is now going to start for him. I can't remember his name, but he was definitely a surprise cut. Not the same exact situation as when Joe Hayden became available, as Joe Hayden was more seen as like a top 10 corner in the NFL and primarily only an outside guy. Desmond King still, though, was a starter quality player that got cut on cutdown day. And I think he's going to come in and start. He'll be the immediate starting nickel. And they'll still use Patrick Peterson in a way, I believe, where they'll bump him inside to get Joey Porter on the field in certain packages. But Desmond King's going to be a contributor. He's going to help out on defense. You can blitz with him. He's a good tackler. He covers well. He's got an alarming amount of pick sixes in his career, which I like. His highlight tape is littered with him scoring touchdowns as a defensive player, so you love seeing that. And I think it's basically the final piece to the team where there was still question marks about, well, how are they going to perform in this area come crunch time against non-preseason opponents. It was nickel corner and it was backup center. And I think the Steelers feel pretty good about backup center, mainly because they didn't add any other bodies, and they've got guys like potentially Nate Herbig who could do that for them, and Spencer Anderson, their 7th-round pick, also got practice reps at backup center. So it's not really a spot that you need to concern yourself about, but it was those two areas that they could have improved before week 1 versus the 49ers, and they were able to check the box off of adding a starting nickel corner.
Yeah, just looked up on with the Texans, just a little blast from the past here too. So of course, Derek Stingley, the other starting boundary corner is Steven Nelson. You may remember.
Yeah, they got Nelson there.
Yeah, I think King didn't get, and then Tavier Thomas is probably their nickel corner from the looks of things. They have Shaq Griffin on the roster as well. as MJ Stewart, formerly from the Browns, more of a safety, but that's like one of those guys that could kind of like play around in different areas as a DB, roam the secondary. But anyway, yeah, King and people were kind of, I think, not happy about that. If they were Texans fans, it's like you're trying to build a team that can compete, and losing King, I mean, the Steelers just swooped right in. It's funny you mentioned Roby, because as soon as I saw that, I said, like, I wonder what's going on with that dude. Like, I'm gonna like look. It just seems like that would be a total Mike Tomlin type move. Like you said, former first round pick, that first round pedigree, not relying on the first round pick to have to play a lot of snaps or anything like that. So when I looked at Roby, was 31st overall to the Broncos back in 2014. So he's been in the league for, this would be his 10th season, and he's 31 and a half years old. So he's a little bit older than, I mean, Desmond King has been around since just 2017, and he's going to be 29 in December. So younger
There's a big difference.
Yeah, younger player, obviously. And when you look at just the production, like I was saying before, King has 10 tackles for loss. Just last season, he had 89 combined tackles, 59 solo. He got to the quarterback a couple times too, so he creates some pressure. He recovered some fumbles, had a pair of picks. He had 5 interceptions over the last 2 seasons, of which he only missed 1 game that he didn't play in over 34. So he appeared in 33 games for the Texans, and formerly an All-Pro in 2018, his second season in the NFL. So quite impressive. I mean, Roby is never really, he's steady enough, but he doesn't have those kind of numbers.
Yeah, King's a better player
at all.
For sure. They made the right call. I'm happy that King ended up being the guy who got the call.
Yeah, absolutely. So moving on, let's see. We got individual players to talk about here, and let's start with Kenneth Shane Pickett. First of his name, breaker of playoff losses, liberator of the Yinzers, heir or successor to Big Ben, first of his name. Like you need like a whole Game of Thrones title like for Kenny Pickett, but
oh yeah.
We talked about this a little off air, and this was something I really kind of wanted to like just drive this point home, because you'd seen this too. I know people that were talking about what Kenny Pickett has to do this season. Because like Kenny Pickett needs to throw for like 5,000 yards and 40 touchdowns, and that's the only way like the Steelers will be competitive. They're still trying to figure out their quarterback situation, because this guy might only be good for a touchdown or 2 here or there. And like, did anyone like actually watch when Ben Roethlisberger played? I mean, I understand that Ben became a pocket passer at a certain point in his career, and I know Ben had some big years, but for the large portion of Ben Roethlisberger's career, he was just a dude with like about 3,500 yards or so. And he didn't have like a whole ton. He had a couple 30 touchdown pass seasons, threw a lot of interceptions. The team was built primarily on like defense. So I don't know how like squinty this looks on the screen, but his rookie year, 2,600 yards, 17 touchdowns, 11 interceptions. He limited his interceptions year 2 only through just under 2,400 yards. Then year 3, Ben Roethlisberger gets up to 3,500. But he threw 18 touchdowns to 23 interceptions, and they didn't. They end up not 2007 even, but 2008, the year he ends up a year after 32 touchdowns, 11 interceptions. He cleans that up. Sub 60% completion percentage on 469 attempts. 17 touchdowns to 15 interceptions. 2008, they win the Super Bowl with one of the best defenses that ever grace an NFL field. So, and we look at this, and there's some 4,000 yard seasons, but we look at it. You had the 1 year in 2018, he didn't even make the playoffs. He led the league in interceptions with 16. He led the league in interceptions twice, actually. 2014, that was an early exit from the postseason, but they got into postseason. And then you had a couple of other 4,000 yard seasons here as well, just as long as they're still in contention, which they were for a large part of this. You look at the touchdowns, and he had a few seasons where he didn't get like maybe 20 touchdowns. So you have a 17 game slate, right? You also play in the AFC North, where a lot of games are closely contended. just how much do you need from Kenny Pickett? What kind of expectations do you need from Kenny Pickett? And I know I'm not leaving you a lot on the bone here, but I'm just going to say, just ask to not turn the ball over, and they're going to be fine. And I have a good feeling with Kenny's accuracy and the way he sees the field, that's really not going to be a problem. Then you just turn around, and we'll be talking about the running backs in a second. I think that's going to be the uptick in the offense as well.
Yeah. I think there's a couple things you can point out, and you can break this down into a couple parts. The expectations that are being put on Kenny's shoulders to break records and put up crazy stats. I think as a community of NFL fans, a lot of us are desensitized to a 3,000-yard passer in his second year. Everybody wants to break the 4,000-yard mark. And if he were to do that in his second year, that's phenomenal. But I'm here to tell you, if he breaks 3,000 yards as a second-year guy, that is a dramatic improvement upon his rookie season. And it's something to celebrate. Josh Allen hardly broke 3,000 yards in his second year. There are guys like Joe Burrow, like he did it. Mahomes obviously did it. Like it can be done. Herbert, like I think Herbert went for 5,000 yards, but the offenses are all different. Like part two of this is the offense in which Kenny's playing it. A lot of people kind of cringe when they hear that the Steelers want to get back to running the football. They're not going to take it back to 2001, 2002 and let Kenny throw it 15 times. He's going to throw the ball. I would expect right around 25 to 30 times a game. But they have a first-round running back in the backfield and an RB2 who's very talented in his own right, that are going to get touches because when they get rolling and they're playing well, the Steelers do well. Nobody was complaining when they saw Jaylen Warren rip off that 62-yard run in preseason. Nobody was complaining last year in the Panthers game, for instance, when Kenny was out and Mitch had to start. Najee was clipping him away like 9-10 yards a rip at one point. So when you're getting that groove, that's a formula to win football games. Part three, I think, is you look at the division itself. You're looking at the division of the AFC North. How many times have we seen AFC North football games end 10-13, 6-3, 3-0, 11-10, 20-10, all the time? It happens all the time. I know that the Bengals have kind of created this reputation now as being point scorers, and they are. They're one of the most prolific offenses in the NFL. They blew us out before, but the AFC North is still the AFC North at its heart, and there's going to be a lot of tough games like that where that's 8 games of the season. So that's 8 games of the season where Kenny might not put up crazy stats. Maybe if he gets in a shootout with Joe Burrow, but as long as they come out of that game as the victors, and maybe Kenny runs one in, or Najee goes for 100 yards, or it isn't always about the stats, as you illustrated talking about early career Ben there. Part four would be we have an elite defense, a very opportunistic defense led by Minkah Fitzpatrick, TJ Watt, Cam Hayward. The ball is going to be in their hands, and there's going to be defensive scores throughout this season, as well as special teams touchdowns, I believe. You have reason to think that Calvin Austin may get loose for one this year, or Desmond King. If Calvin Austin needs a breather or like has to miss a game or two for whatever reason, they have really skilled return men now. So the Steelers are going to put points up in ways that I think are beyond just on the shoulders of Kenny Pickett. I think you're going to be hard-pressed to find somebody who's higher on Kenny Pickett. But I think that if he just breaks 3,000 yards, I'll be very excited about that. 4,000, I'll be over the moon. I think you can expect about 25 to 27 touchdown passes-ish. Because I think he'll also run 4 or 5 in. So if he can account for about 30 touchdowns, that's great. That's awesome. Those are very, very big accomplishments for a second-year guy. So I don't think he needs to do anything crazy for the Steelers to be a good team this year. I think if he can do what I just laid out, they'll be a fun offense to watch. They'll be a successful offense to watch, and they'll get in the playoffs with a good chance to win a game.
I love the Josh Allen kind of comparisons. And it's not that I feel he's more Josh Allen. I feel Kenny Pickett has more of the Joe Burrow things, the small hands, the cool, calm demeanor, the accuracy.
Can make all the throws, but isn't
Yeah.
necessarily praised for his rocket arm.
Yeah, and let's be fair. I think the Bengals were they were already in a better. Well, they drafted Higgins with Burrow, so I can't necessarily say that. But then adding Chase, but they already had like Tyler Boyd and Joe Mixon, and they had some pieces that were in place there. So Kenny's coming in where they have some pieces like Najee Harris, and now it's you're going to start seeing that same thing happen. But with Josh Allen in Buffalo, I mean, Josh Allen, I hate even bringing up his rookie year, but only 2,000 yards and 12 games appeared, 11 starts, 10 touchdowns and 12 interceptions. That guy's a bum. We should write him off already. And we saw the same thing with like Trevor Lawrence. Now Trevor Lawrence is turning around. It's always that first year the guy's got to get over the hump. But Allen wasn't really completing. Second season, 58.8% of his passes, 3,089 yards, 20 touchdowns, 9 interceptions. But he did get it done with his feet. That's where I like that same comparison. And you could probably do the same thing if I pull up Jalen Hurts or a few other of your newer kind of age, newer style mobile quarterbacks, guys who throw it on the run, et cetera, right? Josh Allen has something, it's like ridiculous. Let me see, where's his rushing and receiving stats?
Even Herbert and Burrow use their legs a lot their first like year or two. They've kind of gotten away from it a little bit, especially Burrow with the injury problem, or the problem he had in year 2 or whatever, that year 1. But yeah, even Burrow and Herbert displayed their ability to use their legs. And I think that's another big part of what's going to like affect or kind of blur the lines of like, oh, Kenny could have had better passing stats. I believe he's going to use his legs a lot in his second year because he should. He's a great athlete.
Yeah, and also talking about the Bengals overall, like last year, most people forget they split the entire division. Like they lost the first game to the Steelers, and then they lost to the Ravens, who only scored 17 points. It was or they only scored 17 points, I should say. The Bengals, it was a 19-17 game. They got throttled by the Browns 32-13. That seems to have been a kind of recurring theme the last couple of years because you go back to the season before that. Let me see. I think the Browns put 41 on them, 41-16, and that's kind of an interesting dynamic too. Is that for all the praise the Bengals get, they've lost some games where they give up like 34 points to the Jets, 41 to the Chargers. There's games where they lose to teams that aren't necessarily the strongest teams. Like, I don't think the Chargers 2 years ago were quite the same team that everyone's trying to give credit for. They had a lot of injuries last year, but now this season, of course, people have them in the playoff conversation as well. So
yeah,
it's not impossible. The other thing, you mentioned the Buffalo game like 2 years ago. The Steelers they weren't supposed to win that game. They had no business winning that game. Steelers, like I always used to say, the Steelers were slow starters. And that's something that we're going to talk about with the pregame later in the week with the 49ers. And, I'm actually looking for the Steelers to decisively win that game. You got a West Coast team coming over for a 1:00 game, and they have actually done well the last few openers. It was like pulling teeth against the Bengals, and they were on the road, but they still got it done, right? The defense was super strong, and they were healthy, and they just played way too many snaps, and they beat the hell out of each other, and you lose TJ Watt. And I think that's the biggest thing is like people overlook is like this team they were a game out of the playoffs last year, having started Mitch Trubisky for 4 games, needing Mitch for another 2 more games during the course of the season when Kenny gets knocked out. You didn't have TJ for half the season. And then you look at the way that they end up finishing. So AFC North football is going to be tough sledding. And when the going gets tough, my friend, that's when you lean on the running backs. And I've heard everything from Najee Harris to have a breakout year to just play Jalen Warren. Don't end up paying a running back. They're not worth it. Najee's another Alabama bust. I've never really gotten the impression that Najee is in any bust territory. Last year, and I said bust with a T, not bust as in Jerome Bettis bust. And I'm looking at more that way, where he's paving the road because he's been playing it's been a shit offensive line. That's the best I could say. Over the last couple of years, they've had to replace like guys that could be they should be in Hall of Fame conversation. Marquise Pouncey and David DeCastro, for example, or another All-Pro/Pro Bowl guy, Alejandro Villanueva, and even Ramon Foster, for that matter, and Marcus Gilbert were very good offensive linemen, and you had to replace all of that. Najee comes in, aging Ben Roethlisberger, new offensive coordinator. I think this is really the year where I think he kind of steps out of that shadow, and also like maybe they don't like try and like just run the wheels off this guy. Like, that's been Tomlin's style for a decade, was bell cow running back, feed him, feed him, feed him. Now you have a change of pace. We're talking about how deep the team is. They found Jaylen Warren last year. Now we're talking about like running back threes. Like, we're getting ridiculous with how far down the depth chart that you need to have solid depth. But I think this year for Najee Harris, you take a look at the what he's done the last 2 seasons, his first 2 in the league, and he's been able to, let's see, have, 1,000-yard rusher is a little bit of a misnomer when you're talking about 17-game season now. Does it mean as much? Probably not, like when there was like shorter seasons, right? But still, I think it's still something to hang your hat on. He's had 7 rushing touchdowns in each of these 2 seasons. And then receiving wise, last year he was down. I mean, you would think with the rookie quarterback last year and with Captain Checkdown, Mitch Trubisky, that he would have had a lot more. He only had the 41 catches for 229 yards, still had 3 touchdowns.
I was very vocal about that all year last year. I did not like how they all of a sudden just wouldn't throw to Najee.
Yeah.
But that's like, dude, the Ravens game, he had one of the most important catches of the whole game, the winning touchdown. So I don't know why they got away from that. As a rookie, he caught like 60 balls?
74. That's what I was going to say. 74 for 467 and the 3 touchdowns. So he's had 10 touchdowns cumulative, and all scrimmage yards. He had over 1,600 and then over 1,200 last year. So Najee Harris, is this really a breakout year? I think it's when people might take a little more notice from him, but then how much does Jaylen Warren cut into that production too?
Yeah, I think you're going to see about a 65-35% kind of split with Najee Warren. Going into the preseason, I thought it'd be more 75-25, but Warren has played well in his opportunities, and it does benefit the Steelers to do a change of pace type of style attack, and that's what Najee and Warren are. Najee's a bruiser. He can bust one for like 30, 40 yards, potentially a long touchdown, but he doesn't have that extra gear that Warren has. He's a little more shiftier, and there's no knock on Najee because I still believe Najee is the one and will be the 65 of the 65-35 share, but Warren's going to play, and I think he deserves to play. And you mentioned the offensive line. I think the offense as a whole in general, this is the first time since like pre-Ben tearing his elbow. 2019 was the last time that I felt this confident about our offensive group, because so much of the, we could be this, what could be of George Pickens or Pat Freiermuth or Deontay, we're here now, where we are in the thick of it. This is it. The offensive guys, there's no more room for like potential. And I'm not saying it as a bad thing. I'm saying it as a very excited and positive thing based off of what we've seen. Pickens is ready to make the leap as a top 10 guy. Deontay is playing as good a ball as he has. And that could fall off at any second if he starts dropping the ball. But we're going to stay on the positive side of things with him. Freiermuth is getting recognition as a top 5, top 6 tight end. The offensive line is the best it's been since Ben tore his elbow. I think that's pretty unanimous when you go back and you look at Kendra Green and Kevin Dotson and Trey Turner starting for Ben. And now you've got guys like, I'll start with Mason Cole because he's not the star of the group, but he's a way better center than Kendrick Green, and he's solid enough that you don't really worry about him during the game. It's kind of like Ramon Foster, different positions, but he's kind of got that steady presence to him. Isaac Sumalo, best guard on the market this free agent season. I know you and I both are super excited about Sumalo.
I'm ready to buy his jersey. I'm ready
the first offensive lineman jersey I've ever had. And I swear, I've never been this excited about an offensive lineman addition. Drafting Broderick Jones was cool, mainly because I was of the people that wanted them to go left tackle in the first round, but Sumalo is going to pay dividends, huge dividends. James Daniels was the Sumalo of last season. He was the second, I believe, or third maybe, second best guard, I want to say, available on the market. They got him. He's worked out. And then you draft Broderick Jones in the first round, he'll get on the field here before it's all said and done. But you've got Dan Moore playing the best he's had because of the competition in camp now, I believe. And he's earned the right to start the season because he's played well in the preseason. And you got Chooks, he's fine. Chooks is fine. So the line is the best it's been in 3 or 4 years, 5 years. And that's reason for excitement because that's where the game starts, where the offensive plan starts is in the trenches. But not only there, I think the offense as a whole, as I started that rant with, it is ready now. I mean, Kenny's in year 2. Pickens ready to make the jump. Deontay, Freiermuth. Austin looks healthy and ready to go. You added Allen Robinson. You drafted Darnell Washington. It's all there now. So it's up to them. It's up to them and the coaches and fate to make sure everybody stays healthy, and just that it's in their hands.
Yeah, it's good that you mentioned that, because that's actually where I wanted to go next, was the receivers and who's the breakout, who leads in receptions, who leads in yardage. I mean, it could be that they have like multiple people who are in multiple categories here, and that's the way it used to be for the longest time. Antonio Brown obviously like had a few years there where he was above all, the be all end all, but Bryant would cut into some of that, or be a second 1,000-yard receiver, or Emmanuel Sanders was there for a time, or Mike Wallace, or somebody like that. There was always somebody. And even towards the end where, you're talking about where Ben pops his elbow. And I mean, you got to go back to that, because then you had Le'Veon Bell that just held out and then left. And you had Antonio Brown that walked out on a playoff game, or walked out, not a playoff game, but walked out after they didn't make the playoffs. You know what I mean? He was there for a game and just kind of quit on the team, and then he was gone. And then Ben pops his elbow in 2019. So a lot of the, I guess the flack that Mike Tomlin gets too is that we have like this recency bias of that this team was always 100% healthy, always had a full complement of their players. The Killer Bees really only played in that Jaguars playoff game. They never had them for that whole stretch, all four of those guys on the field at the same time. And even for that matter, Brown and Bell, along with Ben, for a lot of that. I mean, Fitz Toussaint is a third string running back that ends up fumbling in a playoff game. They're playing AFC Championship game trying to throw to Jesse James and Kobe Hamilton. And then you forget 2019 that Duck Hodges was an NFL quarterback. Johnny Holton was a wide receiver. Deion Kane was starting. Like, who are these?
Deion Kane was one of my favorite parts of the offense.
Oh my God, it's tough. Kareth White. I mean, do you remember any of these guys? Like, yeah. It's tough. It's tough trying to remember that. And they come back around healthy, and they go, 11-0 in the COVID season. They had to move their bye weeks, and you lose Bud Dupree. And yes, pre-injury Devin Bush, I felt, was better than post-injury Devin Bush. He was still, I thought Devin Bush, everybody forgets Devin Bush's rookie year because they traded for Minkah Fitzpatrick. And Minkah Fitzpatrick was doing his own things. But I remember when Devin Bush like single-handedly killed the Chargers like in the first quarter of that game. I think he recovered a fumble and had a pick. And there was another game at home where he got like burned on a play. And then they went to go deep, and he was covering somebody down the field and comes up with an interception right after, getting beat for another play.
Mark Andrews.
Yeah, was it Mark Andrews?
Yeah, he climbed the ladder, went through his arms and grabbed the ball and came down. Dude, as a rookie, he looked like what the Steelers had envisioned.
Yeah.
Like, he looked at what we all envisioned. What was he was doing it, and it just, injuries really derailed his career, unfortunately, and the Steelers defense.
Yeah, I mean, just everything changed. I mean, you had what you thought was a good draft with the future of the Steelers. You have T.J. Watt, James Conner, Juju Smith-Schuster, Cam Sutton, and a few of those guys. Second contracts with the team, maybe not long-term plans, obviously no longer with Juju or Connor there. So there's still like, you've had multiple rounds of turnover here, and now you're finally where they're at now with the new quarterback. Because I don't know, was Ben still the same? Did Ben have the same strength? He came out like firing when he came back from the injury, and they went unbeaten. But then toward the end of the season, it's like, this is starting to sputter. They were struggling to score points. We talked about that Chiefs playoff game, and now Kenny Pickett, he comes in and he's third string during camp. He's got to win the. You remember this time last year that the depth chart had the typo? I think it was on like the Tuesday leading up to the game, and Mason Rudolph to the first game last year. And Mason Rudolph was listed as the backup, and there was like this whole Yinzer uproar with pitchforks and torches. And then Mike Tomlin addressed that, I think, in his presser. And then
clerical error.
Yeah, clerical error. Like my ass, it was a clerical error. So, I mean, we're getting back to the receivers here, but just, you're painting a picture of like Vance McDonald, and they tried Darius Green, and just all these players.
Revolving doors everywhere, man. That's my point. Is like, This is the most consistent like group that we can all be excited about, because it's like there are less new faces in the new places, you know what I mean? And the new ones that have already shown that they're going to be great additions, like Sumalo, or Allen Robinson, for instance. Like, those are welcome new additions that you don't feel as like cautious about. And then everybody else who's in place has been in place and is ready to be a part of a good offense again. Finally, you're finally going to see the Steelers, I think, brought up with the other like top 10 offenses in the NFL, where we haven't seen that since the days of Bell, Brown, and Ben.
Exactly. And even Deontay Johnson himself,
Yeah,
2019. How many quarterbacks has he played with now? Mason, like his rookie year, like he had Ben for, 6 quarters of football. 5. He's on 5 now because you had Ben, then Ben for a very short spell, and then it was Mason and Duck, then back to Ben, and then Mitch. Last year, if you noticed, like the games that Mitch came in, those guys had rapport because they worked on everything all last season. You didn't have that same rapport because Kenny wasn't the guy yet. Now Kenny's the guy, and that's why you're seeing some of this pay dividends. So when we're talking about whether or not Kenny's going to throw for even like around 3,000 or 3,500 yards, who emerges from this group as the benefactor, I don't have a clue, because Deontay Johnson did not have a receiving touchdown last year. And that's all people will really bring up. He led the team with 147 targets. So a lot of that's Mitch. 86 receptions was also the lead for the team. Nobody else had double or triple digit targets. Pat Freiermuth had 98. So that's important to put up there because we're talking tight end, and Pat could cut in that, but Pat only had 2 touchdowns. George Pickens ended up with 4, and a lot of that towards the end of the season. Deontay also led the team in yardage with 882. Not a 1,000-yard receiver last year. Shouldn't be surprising. The team only threw for 12 touchdown passes, and one of those came from Chase Claypool to Derek Watt. So I rest my case. I think all of these numbers will have an uptick. So will someone have a 1,000-yard season? I believe so, and I believe it's probably Pickens because he's the deep threat. He's going to get those bigger plays down the field. I think Deontay will still eat, but I wouldn't be surprised if Pat Freiermuth was up here in at least the receiving yard category. But in touchdowns, does Pat Freiermuth have a bounce back when you have a rookie such as Darnell Mount Washington out there roaming around the field as well?
Yeah, it's kind of a pointless exercise, but I'll do it because it's fun. It's going to be hard to nail any of these, but based off of just what we know about the receivers, I think Deontay will lead in catches and targets. I think he'll lead in catches and targets because he's always open. And he chunks away a lot. I think, actually, if you look back to the drive versus the Buccaneers in the preseason, the first drive that Kenny went like 5 or 6 of 7 for a touchdown, that in itself was a really good synopsis of how the offense as a whole, I think, will work. Kenny will chunk away with Deontay, Freiermuth, and then he'll hit Pickens over the top. And then, of course, that'll vary with Allen Robinson and Calvin Austin. But I think Deontay leads in targets and receptions. I think Pickens leads in yards. And I think he does break 1,000. I think Pickens leads in touchdowns. I think Calvin Austin leads in yards per catch. I think Calvin Austin will be chunking away I think it was Mike Wallace maybe, who when he started out being who he was for us, I think he was averaging 17, 18 yards per catch at one point, which is very high. So I think Calvin Austin can replicate something like that for the Steelers as a young guy here. I think Freiermuth will be kind of a combination of what you'll see from Deontay and Allen Robinson. I think Robinson's going to be a first down machine. I think he'll be good in the red zone for Kenny as well. But he's not going to be an over-the-top guy. And I don't think he'll ever lead the team in catches for a game. But he'll contribute in a positive fashion. I think Freiermuth will find his role in a similar way of Deontay and Robinson, where he'll be a first down machine. He'll be a red zone machine. And last year as a rookie, I saw a next-gen stat that Kenny, when it came down to the 3rd and 4th quarter, I believe, Freiermuth led him in targets. So Kenny trusts Freiermuth, rightfully so. He had a really good touchdown versus the Bills in the preseason. They've already kind of shown that they have a good rapport. And then you've got the room for other miscellaneous plays. You're going to have Najee and Warren and McFarland whenever McFarland gets the dress for a game. He'll catch passes, I'm sure, and the occasional play to Gunner, as much as people don't want to hear that. But so there's going to be other passes in Washington and Connor Hayward. Yes, so the ball's going to get dispersed in other ways. But the stars of the show, that the lead roles of Kenny's supporting cast, Deontay, Pickens, Freiermuth, Robinson, that's how I see the breakdown going. But like I said, it's pointless because I don't know if any of that will be right. But I feel pretty good about Deontay leading in catches and targets and Pickens leading in yardage. I feel like those are the safest bets.
Yeah, yeah, and you're looking for the breakout from Pickens, and we mentioned Mike Wallace, and you were off a little bit. Mike Wallace had 16.6 yards per reception in 2011, his third season in the NFL.
Oh, I was close.
Wait.
I went over,
I'm
though.
setting you.
Price is Right rules.
I'm setting you up. Hold on.
Okay.
Hold on. I'm setting you up. That was his first Pro Bowl season, but he had 19.4 and 21.0 in the other 2 years before that. Ungodly.
Yeah, that's not normal. That is, it's like if you say it like, 19, 20 yards, like, yeah, per catch, that was his average.
Yes.
So like it wasn't often less than that.
But also, you know what his long was that Pro Bowl year?
99?
95. Pretty close.
95.
Yeah. I keep thinking about too, and I just can't shake it. And I got to see. Sammy Coates. We really thought Sammy Coates was going to be the man. And he had the 1 year in 2016, he had 20.7 yards per reception, which is pretty crazy. I think that's the year they had the Bumblebee jerseys, and he had that big game against the Jets before he broke his fingers.
It has to be, because
So,
that
yeah.
probably like affects those numbers quite a bit. Because
Yeah.
he looked good in that game. I feel for Sammy Coates because he was a good guy, and like, yeah, that was strictly injury related, because he showed that he could be a guy when called upon. But as a receiver, go figure, your fingers in your hands are kind of important.
He was dropping the ball before that too. He got knocked. He could have had like 5 touchdowns in that Jets game, if I remember.
I think it's when he
Yeah.
got hurt was the Jets game.
Yeah, that's why
I
he
can think
wasn't
of the
catching
exact
it.
play.
Uh-huh.
They hit him on a crosser over the middle in the red zone, and he put his hand on the Jets like helmet to stiff arm.
Yeah.
And he smacked it so hard, dude went down. But it was after that moment that like people were like, he might be hurt. I think it's because he broke his finger doing a stiff arm on the Jets like face mask helmet area.
Face mask helmet area. Got to watch out.
Not that it
for
matters now, but that's what I think happened to Sammy Coates.
I know. He tried to make a comeback in like the XFL or something too. So you got to feel for him. We need to move along. So we're not like up against it here, but we got 2 more things to talk about. Primarily, this one's kind of like a hodgepodge with the defense, but it's worth bringing up because it wasn't the same TJ Watt last year. I mean, he was right out the beginning. He picked off Joe Burrow somehow and continues to do that.
Oh, he was on a tear that first game. He
Yeah.
was playing like the defensive player of the year that first game.
No, it just comes off of that, tied the sack record, should have had it. Still trying to figure out who'd he get in Baltimore? Was that Huntley?
Yeah.
And how that was like a run or what? Like, come on, man. That was a sack. I mean, you look at Strahan's sack on Favre, and that broke the record. It should have been
It's
record
like
breaking.
they called that on in the preseason game versus the Bills when Josh Allen like crossed the line of scrimmage, and then Quan Alexander knocked him back, and then Highsmith eventually got him behind the line of scrimmage. They didn't count that as a sack for Highsmith. It was like a run.
Yeah, that one's even maybe more understandable than
Yeah.
That one with Baltimore was just really bad. But I guess the point is even when TJ came back last year, maybe he wasn't 100%, and now you got him 100%. You got a new contract for Alex Highsmith. Minka Fitzpatrick always playing at a very high level. Patrick Peterson, future Hall of Famer, gas left in the tank. Steelers defense, does it return to a top unit? Are there some individual performances here that we should talk about as being among the best in the league? And I do believe that TJ Watt will be back in that conversation as one of the GOATs in the league, just alongside guys like Aaron Donald. But when you talk about Aaron Donald, you got to bring up Cam Hayward. Cam Hayward almost seems like sometimes in these conversations as a forgotten man, but Pittsburgh Steelers have depth everywhere now. We talked about adding King, but even in that secondary, you're going to ease in Joey Porter. You have Levi Wallace as a safe starter. You mentioned Peterson. You've got Keanu Neal and DeMonte Casey along with Minka Fitzpatrick. You look at the whole linebacker core there. If you're in, your base packages and you've got 4 linebackers, you're going to have Highsmith and Watt, and then you got Cole Holcomb, you got Landon Roberts, you got Quan Alexander as another guy who shifts in that, and even with the edge guys, Marcus Golden, Nick Herbig having a crazy 3.5 sack preseason. The defensive line has lots of rotational depth. You've got not only Cam Hayward, and then you got Larry Ogunjobi, but now you got the Marvin Leal. You've got the rookie Keanu Benton. You've got Armon Watts that's a veteran that's been brought in there. You've got Isaiah Loudermilk that's still part of this conversation, but at least you've got on every tier they're at least like one or two dudes deep. And I can't remember the last time it's been like this, because the Steelers have had to draft guys and immediately put them on the field. I look at the defensive picks and everybody wanted Porter. You need that shutdown corner. Not as many people were looking for Benton. I know I was. I think most of us were. We were talking about him. And there you go, Tyson Alualu. He got old, got hurt, wasn't the same guy. Chris Wormley wasn't that guy. Now they've got guys.
Can't go wrong drafting D-line, ever.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is they don't have to rush these guys out on the field anymore, and they've got some free agent acquisitions. I look at this defense as though even aside from your biggest marquee names, you knock on wood, you don't want that happening with TJ Watt again. You don't want anything happening with like Minka being out. That happened years ago. Remember when Troy started to get banged up and dinged and the defense was different. Now I think the defense is way different, and I think that they're going to be even more of a shutdown unit where you're not going to have somebody like just come in and just throttle them, basically.
Yeah, I did, dude. I mean, nickel corner and inside backer were the two spots that I felt as a reasonable person I needed to worry about going forward with this team. And since adding Quan Alexander and since seeing Quan Alexander, Landon Roberts, and Cole Holcomb in action in the preseason, I'm very impressed. The linebacker room, the inside linebacker room, is night and day different. They all three of them, they just read their keys so confidently and they fill the hole full speed. Like the vibe from the linebackers is completely different than what we've been trying to do. Like this hodgepodge of bodies of like, all right, who are we going to bring in next that can help us out? Who was the guy from Florida? John Bostic. Bostic didn't work. Bringing back Sean Spence didn't work. Devin Bush, the shell of himself, didn't work. Miles Jack not working. Robert Spillane, yeah, he did that one thing against Derrick Henry that one time, but like it's just always been like, okay, we'll get by at inside backer. We'll get by. Maybe the other team won't notice that we have inside backers on the field. Maybe we'll get lucky that way. But this is the best the room has been in a long time. I don't know if anybody of that trio is going to make the Pro Bowl, but all three players are above average, in my opinion. And that's an improvement of what we've seen. Nickel corner, they got two guys who ended up making the team. Most thought it was going to be just one, but they both played so well in preseason. I'm talking about Riley and Sullivan, that they give you a little bit of confidence going into the season, and didn't really feel 100% comfortable. So what do? They get Desmond King. Great addition. And you're right. They have depth at all three levels now that I haven't seen in a very long time. I similar to inside backer, outside backer, edge. I was so sick of every season hearing about edge 3 and edge 4, how we have nobody. They captured lightning in a bottle that one time with Melvin Ingram, and then he started crying about his snap count and wanted out of town. They had it going for a second there with a third guy, but since we've had TJ and Highsmith, we haven't had any depth at outside edge rusher. The fall off has been severe with Derek Tuska and Anthony Chickalo. And,
yeah, those were your top guys. Tuzar Skipper, maybe if they pulled him back off of the street, or Ola.
Exactly. And now you got Marcus Golden, who can still play, still contributes. I still think Marcus Golden is a good player. I was excited when they added him. Yeah. And Nate Herbig, who graded out as Pro Football Focus. Nick Herbig graded out as Pro Football Focus's top rookie on defense of the whole preseason. Man, he almost scored 100%. So he crushed it. And it's not like a preseason that Tuzar Skipper had or other edge rushers in the past where they got low quality sacks. These are high quality sacks that Nick Herbig put on tape, and the world took notice. Like, I think as much as I do like Marcus Golden, Herbig will take over as the 3 at some point in his rookie season. And the depth they have there is going to pay off huge for the Steelers, because Highsmith and TJ can't play every snap. You're going to have to see those other two on the field. And finally, for a change, that won't be as bad of a thing as it used to be in years past.
Yeah, totally with you. I was going through the schedule just to see what should these offenses like really like scares you. Are you scared of? San Francisco, I don't know what Brock Purdy is. I've never been on the Brock Purdy train. I feel like I could be like, Duck Hodges had a few lightning in a bottle games, or Mike White got his like jersey sent to the Hall of Fame the game after throwing 4 touchdowns. Like, what, you know, you have a flash in the pan thing, and this guy's coming off a pretty serious injury as well. So I mean,
long as our run defense comes to play, I'm not too scared of them, because I don't think Purdy will kill us with his arm, and I think we're better equipped to handle McCaffrey and Kittle than we have been in years past. So they don't strike fear into me really at all, as long as our run defense comes to play.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm talking about like 28, 30, 40 points, like something like that. I don't see the Cleveland Browns are not going to do that. I don't think to any, well, I won't say anybody. They've hung some points on the Bengals here or there, but not on the Steelers. That is just not the MO with those two teams playing each other. The Vegas Raiders, I don't see it. I don't know what they're going to do. The Texans,
I can't wait to play them.
Yeah. The Ravens, I'm sorry, don't see it happening either. Rams are not the same team as they had been, and I don't know what's going on with Cooper Kupp right now. And
I got 2 fantasy drafts tonight and tomorrow. I'm not trying to. My one buddy I don't know if he's watching the news or not, but he planned on taking Kupp. So
take him and Jonathan Taylor, and you're set. You know, dig yourself a hole you can't climb out of. That's the worst part with fantasy. I got in a fantasy draft. Literally had 2.5 hours of notice, and then scrapped together a team. Of course, I picked 9th out of 10 teams, and I got like the rebound snake pick. But
tell us your first 2 picks.
Oh, who did I take first? Saquon and Bijan Robinson.
Oh, you did good, Bijan. Dude, you got him at 11.
Yeah.
Or 12. Nice.
Yeah.
That's good value. That's a good. You're zigging when everyone else is zagging. I gotta admit to you, I've been thinking about that more and more with fantasy, where I'm really determined to go receiver with my drafts. But the more I think about it, the more I'm like, but if I get 2 elite running backs, that makes it way harder on everyone else. So I don't hate your strategy there, going running back at all, because that could pay off when everybody else is like scrambling a week from now or 2 weeks from now, trying to figure out a guys to pick up.
Too many committees, and I won't ever go against, like, what's his name that's coaching with the Giants? Oh man, Dayball. Yeah. Anytime any running backs in his system, always. I mean, Saquon had a good year last year, and provided he's still, there's no reason I think he isn't healthy. That whole team's better. You take a look at, I ended up I've never been a guy to just jump out and grab a quarterback. So, like, I don't care about, like, the Josh Allens, Patrick Mahomes. Let somebody else, like, take the jump for them, and I'm going to try and get guys with higher upside. So, of course, I have Justin Fields and Kenny Pickett are the 2 guys that I have on my roster.
You got Justin Fields without trying to get a quarterback?
Mm-hmm.
Well, he's supposed
to, probably the 7th or 8th guy off the board out of a 10-team league.
Okay, yeah. I would expect him to go, like, 4th or 5th, just because the book's still out on his, like, NFL career. But as far as a fantasy quarterback, he's a good one. And I think Kenny's going to be a lot of Steeler fans. QB2.
A deep stash. It was him or Daniel Jones, but I did homer it up, and I snagged George Pickens as my.
That's not a bad play, though.
Receiver.
He's going to lead us in yards and touchdowns like we think, man.
Yeah, Devontae Smith and George Pickens are my 2 that I'm rolling into battle with on the wide receiver end, since I went running back heavy. So I
was going to say, going RB and getting Devontae Smith still. That's a nice grab.
I appreciate you, man. Really. Back to the Steelers, though. See, it's like I passed on, like, Josh Jacobs, for example. I'm like, Josh Jacobs going to be the same dude or whatever. I just don't think that offense is going to be as good. And Jimmy G's made of glass. I consider that too. So who knows if he's even. Brian was saying this. Who knows if he's even a quarterback by week 3. But yeah, Texans, Ravens, Rams, Jaguars. Okay, the Jaguars might be scary. They might be really scary good. I don't know.
Yeah, if Calvin Ridley's as good as they say he is, then they can be a scary offense.
Even if he's not, Christian Kirk, Zay Jones. They had some dudes last year. Trevor Lawrence was starting to heat up. You've got
I think they're good no matter what. But with Calvin Ridley, they're scary.
Think Bixby, Evan Ingram. They've got some.
Ingram's nice now, yeah.
A lot of weapons. Titans, I'm not afraid of. I don't know what the Packers are going to present. I like some of those guys.
Yeah, but they're too young. They remind me of the Steelers last year. It's all still very up in the air. It's all still potential. Watson's pretty good, and Jones is pretty good. But Aaron Jones, I feel like the time's ticking on him. The wheels could fall off at any second with him. And Christian Watson, he's exciting as a rookie, but we've all seen exciting rookies not totally just amount to anything sometimes. Chase Claypool had a really good rookie year, and him and Watson are kind of similar in a lot of ways. So we'll see how good they are. But yeah, I feel like they're like a Steelers team of last year where it's a lot of potential. So no, they don't strike fear into me either.
Even though Love has been around the league for a few years, is his first year as a starter. So
Yeah.
I think there's still a curve there, first year as a starter. I know Mahomes didn't have that. He sat for a year and then just jumped in and was like rocket pack. But that is so like rare. It's so rare to play somebody even like Burrow that ascends as fast as they did. I mean, you need a couple of years, you need some seasoning, and sometimes these guys don't get it, and coaches are on hot seats and they're fired within 2-3 years. So that'll be interesting to see. Browns and Bengals are on here again. Arizona Cardinals do not scare me. Patriots do not scare me. Colts, don't know what they're going to be by that point either. I mean, I think the rookie quarterback there is going to be, I think he'll be all right, and starting him right away is probably the right. Get his feet wet. He may have a down year or whatever. This team just doesn't have the talent there, and then you build around that, and you see what his strengths
how I
are.
feel about that.
Yeah.
Yes, get the kid out there.
Yeah, Anthony Richardson. And Bengals.
I'm doing a callback to like Kenny Mitch, but yeah also I like Richardson in general. But yeah, it's like, yeah, dude, just if it's like Gardner Minshew, there's no reason to start him. I like Gardner Minshew, but just put Richardson out there.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, they don't have Taylor. Then you got the Bengals again, and then the Seahawks. Let's see if Geno Smith turns into a pumpkin. Otherwise, man, that's a track meet with DK Metcalf, Tyler Lockett, and then Jackson Smith and Jigba. Whew, man, and we'll see what that backfield looks like.
I like
Baltimore
Smith and Jigba.
So, I mean, you can see where this is set up. It's not like they're playing Kansas City. It's not like they're playing Buffalo. They like the top. They're not playing the Chargers. You're not playing these guys that are like your. Burrow's like the one that stands out here is like really your 4,000-yard passer, and they got him twice by virtue of him being in the division.
Put a pin in this right now. Say we start really good and we're like 8-2 or something, or like they're 7-3 even, or no, we'll say 8-2. Oh, the Steelers haven't played anybody. That's going to be the conversation. They haven't played anybody.
That's going to be it, because last year when they were pretty much dog crap. You take a look at who they did have to play during the first half of the season. We said they were going to be like 1-7, and everybody was so down on them. They had the Bengals coming off the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
You had
Eagles, Bills.
Patriots, even Bill Belichick at home. We didn't really know what the Jets were. The Browns were supposed to be the second coming already, even with Jacoby Brissett. Bills, Brady and the Buccaneers. Tua with the Dolphins. I mean, the Dolphins, Tyreek Hill, Mike what the hell's his name? Why am I grasping McDaniels? Yes. Offensive-minded coach. That was a 16-10 game. The Steelers could have walked away with the Philadelphia Eagles. Eventually get into the Super Bowl. That was the whole top half of that schedule. That was crazy. And of course, they didn't play anybody. That's been the knock, because they had the Panthers, the Falcons, the Colts, the Raiders at the tail end of last year too, but they still had to play some games from behind, and they were finding their way. And that's where it behooves them this season. So that brings us to the last point, of course, is Mike Tomlin, and that's where people will say, "Oh, hasn't had a losing season." I'm sorry, but you're betting against Mike Tomlin this year. You're probably haven't been paying attention to the team for a very long time. This team is primed and ready to not finish last in this division. They will compete for a playoff spot, provided there isn't some major catastrophes that happen along the way.
Exactly, and that stuff always goes without saying. There's always going to be commenters that are like, "Oh, well, what if this happens?" Like, yeah, dude, if worst case scenario arises, then yeah, you see 2019, and people love to throw the whole, "Oh, never had a losing season." They say it like it's a bad thing. I don't know about you. I prefer my football team to be consistently competitive every year of my life. And that's been the case with the Steelers. So yeah, I want a playoff win as much as the next guy. I want another Super Bowl as much as the next guy, if not more. But I'm not going to act like the no losing seasons is like a knock on Tomlin. That's a good thing. We're in it every year. I remember when Ben got hurt vividly, 2019, I was in my parents' kitchen still living at home, and I looked to the heavens. And I was like, God, please just let us stay competitive enough this year so every game is like engaging and fun. And what do you know? They ended up almost making the playoffs with Mason and Duck, of all things. Like, if there would have been 7 teams in the playoffs allowed that year, the Steelers would have made it as the 7th seed. So I've beaten this horse twice over, but I love Tomlin as a coach. I think he's a great coach. I think he's put that on paper. He has his flaws, but as you so easily illustrate, like you could point to a lot of coaches and be like, oh, when was their last playoff win? When was theirs? When was theirs? It's all over the NFL. There's only one winner each year, and I think of the past like 4 or 5 seasons, this is the best roster overall and the best chances that we all have of seeing Tomlin get a playoff win again under his belt and then potentially do more. Like this team is ready, and yeah, I don't question Tomlin at all right now.
Nope, and I haven't questioned him for a very long time, but you've got some entitled folks, and I always pose the question, and this has been like the philosophies of building teams. Would you rather have like the consistency and being in that, contention, at least getting into the playoffs, or maybe just a little more than that, or would you rather do what the Rams did? And now and the Buccaneers, those teams look like they're in shambles, and there is no way they're climbing out of it in the next decade.
Yeah, I know myself well, and I live year to year, day by day, and I want each year to be like fun. I want every Steelers game to mean something. I want every game to feel like my heart's in my throat, and that's what they've given me for the better part of 20 years. So I wouldn't change it, especially because I've had the pleasure and fortune of seeing a Super Bowl or 2 Super Bowls in my life. So I know it can be done this way, and they don't have to do the Matthew Stafford or get Tom Brady out of retirement or fire Tomlin it can be done the Steeler way.
Yeah, I've got some breaking news for you, my friend, as well.
Did Bosa sign?
No. In fact, that's something that's pretty. I didn't see that. If he did, that's not what I have. It is jersey numbers.
Hell yes!
Marcus Golden just switched from 54 to 44. Quan will be wearing 54, which Golden just dropped. So he's not wearing 26 since Anthony McFarland made the roster. Desmond King's wearing 25.
Yeah, Golden loves 44. That's been his number his whole career. So when they dropped Tanner Muse, I kind of thought that he might switch to that. And damn so the Steelers, dude. I know Quan wanted a single digit, and I wanted him in one too. That's so annoying. But 54 is a good backer number. That's a good backer number.
It's so funny because like I'm like, oh, you're gonna love this. You're like a kid on Christmas right there. You're like, oh, who's wearing what, where, when, how, why?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I'm not the only. There's many of us out there, Joe.
Kenny with the visor or Kenny without the visor?
I think the visor was more of a precautionary thing for him last year.
Yeah.
Because for whatever reason, it just like works with that helmet style. He switched up and is wearing like the Pat Mahomes helmet now, which I like visorless. He looks good visorless. The helmet last year, they stuck him in. That's an ugly helmet, dude. I don't even like that Freiermuth wears it. Like, it just doesn't look right. So he doesn't need a visor to fix that. He's good with the helmet now.
Yeah, I didn't see any news on Bosa yet. And what kind of football shape and stuff will he be in? We'll be talking about that soon in the coming days when we get to our pregame show.
Hey, you take your time, Nick.
Sundays.
Take your time, man. Get your money.
Yeah, get your money. Go get paid. You deserve it. The edge rushers deserve it. Yeah, that's like there was talk. I listened to a lot. I was doing a lot of driving over the weekend, and I was listening to a lot of the NFL radio on XM, and just some of the stuff that was being said. It was like, well, the 49ers could still weather this storm. Like they've got their quarterback situation figured out, and even without Nick Bosa, they still have enough on defense. And I'm just like, and there was no mention of TJ, no mention of Minka, no mention of Cam Hayward, just that Kenny Pickett. They're still trying to figure out the offense on the Steelers side. And you made a point earlier where it's like, we're a lot closer to this situation. Some of these people are just reading like little snippets wherever. And I'm like, on what planet are the 49ers closer to whatever with Brock Purdy, who was the last pick of the NFL draft, a farm quarterback 3 on that roster that got shoved in the middle of whatever and got just, how many games did he actually play? I'm going to actually pull this up for a second. It's not like he had a full, it wasn't many. I know like it would help if I could spell Purdy. He had boys Purdy.
7?
Yeah. I mean, it actually says he played in 9 games with 5 starts. So
okay, 5 starts. I said 6. I was close.
He had 13 touchdowns to 4 interceptions. He had he had the 2 games where he threw. I mean, his attempts, he wasn't attempting more than 30 passes often or very, very frequently. and they won some games. And you talk about competition. So they beat they played against the Dolphins. He wasn't the starter. Tampa Bay Buccaneers, Seattle Seahawks, Commanders, Raiders, Cardinals, and then you got the Seahawks and the Cowboys, and then the Eagles in the playoffs. And when they played the Cowboys, I mean, that was just like almost like a fluke thing. I mean, he didn't throw a touchdown pass or an interception in that game at all. So yeah, it's I'm not to say that he's like completely like, if some people have already like kind of pegged him as like the second coming of Tom Brady, and I'm like, whoa, wait, you got to wait and see some more.
He's a game manager. He's a killer. If
he didn't get hurt, I would have more reason. But I mean, basically he had like a very similar injury to Ben Roethlisberger. And I'm just like, as soon as you saw that, and I understand maybe the procedure or whatever, things were even different compared to when Ben was operated on, and he's not as old, so, you know, he could heal. But you see this stuff happen even with pitchers, Major League Baseball and stuff like that. And it's like, sometimes these guys don't come back the same way. We had the hope that Devin Bush would come back the same way, that Ben would come back and play forever, and it just doesn't work that way. So that's like where I'm very skeptic. He did very well. Kyle Shanahan has a good system for what that was, but in no way are you going to say that Bosa just gets yanked off of this lineup. I know I got Hargrave there now, but how are you going to say like one of the premier edge rushers in the NFL gets pulled away and not make that same comparison with the Pittsburgh Steelers? It's exactly going to be the same thing. That defense is going to be hurting some. So that's the way I feel about that game coming up. We shall see. So
can't wait.
Yep. Oh no, I really can't. I wish it was yesterday.
By this time next week, we'll be celebrating.
I know. Popping champagne already, and you know we got to pump the brakes no matter what it is. If they put up like 40 points, which I don't expect them to do, you're not going to have like balloons and champagne and like everything. You know, cigars.
No,
like,
I am. Screw all those people out there that are like, oh, dude, it's week one. Yeah, you know what? We get like 17 games of this per year. So, yeah, I'm going to celebrate a lot if we win week one. If we beat the Niners, I'm going to go nuts. I wouldn't come within 5 feet of me because you might catch something. I'm going to be so jacked up, dude, if we beat the Niners week one, and rightfully so. As an NFL diehard fan, this is all of our right. Everybody does it. It isn't just Steeler fans. If somebody else pulls a big win week one, they're going to be victory lapping right next to us in lane 2.
I try to temper my expectations. It's like the same thing, like with Coach Prime in Colorado beating TCU. And, you know, I had a sense that was going to happen. And now everybody's all of a sudden, now it's like everybody was like, a lot of people were crapping on him as whether or not he could coach. And I didn't have any doubt with that. And I was pulling for him. And now he goes and he's running his mouth. And I look at the rest of their schedule and I'm just like, and maybe it's motivational.
So celebrate now while you can.
Yeah, like I guess get it in, but you know,
come on in, Joe. The water's fine.
You know, the way it works is nobody likes winners. Like maybe back in like World War II era, everybody supported the winners and the real good guys and everything. And everybody now is just like, once you win, they're like, now they want to see the downfall. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Do
like
it again.
Tom Brady and just everybody. You just name somebody, and it's like you want to see them just fail. So it's kind of funny. It's like everybody likes to root for the underdog. Once you're no longer the underdog, then it's like, start digging that hole and shoveling the dirt on top of them. So
say la vie.
Yeah. All right, folks, that'll do it for us here at the Steel City Underground podcast. Hope you enjoyed the show. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. My name's Joe. His name is Zach. Zach, follow on Tinder, or not Tinder. Follow on Tinder, TikTok. Follow on Tinder.
I've been on Tinder in years. Wow, I'm out the game.
I don't know what made me say that. Follow on Tinder. Holy crap. TikTok, a slip of the tongue. Steel City Underground. At Steel City Underground on TikTok. We got some videos, clips, shorts. We got those going up on YouTube, Instagram, and all that good stuff too. So don't forget to follow us there. And of course, it says X next to your name. Finally got all that updated, except for maybe other places. Man, there's just too many places to do that. I was watching, I think one of the college football games or something. Somebody had the Twitter logos and stuff. So it can't. Old habits die hard, and it's just
We're all calling it Twitter.
Yeah, it was just like, hey, tomorrow we're gonna change the name to X, and I still can't get over that. But anyways. Folks, until next time, that'll do it for us. We encourage everyone out there to be safe, be good, and we'll catch you later.
We would like to thank you for listening and remind our listeners to follow us on social media and our website, www.steelcityunderground.com.